America, bonjour, hi Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt live from Studio North on this 4th day of October, a Tuesday in the year of our Lord 2022. I'm so glad you were with me this morning. Great deal happened yesterday, happened overnight. The devastation in Florida is truly staggering. The Wall Street Journal reports this morning that 5 days after Hurricane Ian ripped its way across Florida, the scale of the destruction is still coming into full focus. Officials have confirmed 64 storm-related deaths. The majority of those victims died by drowning. Virginia today is going to be the one that sees tidal flooding along Hamptons Road, region into Chesapeake Bay, as the water from Ian, as it moved inland, continues to flow down towards the coast. It may even stretch into Delaware and parts of New Jersey. The damage estimates are staggering. Risk modeler Karen Clark and Company estimated that the privately insured loss, that means the insurance companies will be writing checks up to $63 billion, but there's another 35 to 40 billion in uninsured loss there. The first responders are doing an amazing job. More than 1,600 rescues have been made. National Guard engineers are out. There are 5,000 members of the National Guard helping to both prevent looting and to reopen roads, and we've seen some of the road damage down there. It will be a long time until Sanibel and Pine Islands are restored to anything like normal. They don't have power still. It'll be a while. They don't have other access except by boat. It's really a mess. My friend Mike Gallagher, the radio host, not the congressman, is leading an effort to raise money for Florida. I would recommend you run over to Gallagher, MikeOnline.com, and help him out. Yesterday, on the way back from Puerto Rico, well, let me do the Puerto Rico clips first. The president in Puerto Rico, honest to goodness, this is not going to be easy to listen to, folks. The president is just infirm. Cut number 2.
Minnesota, Texas, to help however they can. And New York sent not only a congresswoman, one of the most congresswomen in the Congress, but the state troopers and emergency responders.
Okay, so he's wrestling with the teleprompter again, but New York sent not only the congresswoman, the most congresswoman of the congresswoman in Congress. Here's what he says is going to help Puerto Rico recover and Florida recover. Cut number 3.
This recovery from Fiona is underway. I'm encouraged by all the stories that are opening up, the hospitals that have kept running, the supply chains that held steady, and the debris has already begun to be cleared on roads across the island, and we will continue the debris coverage. Still, we have to do more. We have to ensure that when the next hurricane strikes, Puerto Rico is ready. Today, I'm announcing more than $60 million in funding to help coastal areas in Puerto Rico become better prepared for the storm. For example, we can create a flood warning system to help shore up levees and flood walls. In addition, there's nearly $700 million in infrastructure investments in Puerto Rico that have already been announced since I signed the bipartisan infrastructure law last November. For example, we've awarded $90 million to upgrade PR2 highway, and we've announced $163 million to begin construction on a canal to restore help me with the pronunciation. Martin Pena. That entire ecosystem.
Okay, so the president can't pronounce, the president can't phrase, and the person you see helpfully leading the clapping is First Lady Joe Biden, who got, I don't know, the 8 or 9 people who were there to applaud. This president does not have the confidence of the American people, and part of it is ideological, but a lot of it is just the fact he's 80 years old, and we shouldn't elect 80-year-olds to be the president. There is in Ellis News Items this morning, the Substack I subscribe to, this statement from Gallup, this bit of news. America's view of the 2 major U.S. political parties remains more negative than positive, but the Republican Party favorability rating is now slightly better than the Democratic Party's. Now, that is a big change. All right, so it was, Republicans have gone up 4% overall. Democrats have gone down 4% for an 8-point swing in just a year. And that's for the whole party. It doesn't say anything about the president. Monmouth polling came out yesterday on the president's favorability rating, 39%. He's going to drag them down so far. Meanwhile, the White House, the president himself said nothing about the slaughter of innocents in Iran. Karine Jean-Pierre came out and said she's alarmed and appalled by Iran's violent crackdown. So that's not going to do it either. Big news from the Supreme Court yesterday. They announced that they will hear a tech case. They are going to be examining Section 230, which limits the liability. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, passed at the dawn of the internet age to protect Google and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube from the consequences of the material they post, including ISIS videos. Twitter and Google have been sued by victims of ISIS for their propagation of the terrorist group's propaganda over the many years that they existed till Donald Trump crushed them in the early year of his presidency. However, Section 230 is a shield, and will that shield be taken away in the Gonzalez versus Google case or in Twitter versus Tommen? I don't know. One thing that will interest me is, does that shield make them government actors? I think that will also be a debate in that. But when the Supreme Court sent that up, every lawyer in the United States who knows anything about the Supreme Court got retained by one of the big tech companies. Those briefs, when I walked into the D.C. Circuit clerkship in June of 1993, I'm fresh out of Michigan Law School, and I'm sitting down to clerk, and the first big case that I got from George McKinnon was the AT&T access fee charge case. And over in the corner, there was a stack of briefs, amicus briefs, that had to be 5 feet tall. And I looked at it and I said, what in the world is that? And Judge McKinnon, George just kind of laughed, said, that's your life now. That's the AT&T access fee case. And the AT&T access fee case affected everybody. And the numbers of briefs that were filed. Now, an amicus brief is not worthless. Sometimes they make a lot of difference. You always read the brief from petitioner, the brief from respondent, and the brief from the government, if there are any. You might read the AG's briefs if the states have weighed in on one side or the other, all of the AG's brief. But then you pick and choose among the amicus. The clerks don't have time to read 700 amicus briefs, however many were in there. Well, they're going to have more. They're going to break the amicus brief record on Section 230. Because that thing should go away. Or those who are accepting the protection of Section 230 should be understood to be agents of the government, and therefore subject to First Amendment standards. Hugh Hewitt's view of the world. That's what I want the court to do. Ukrainian forces are amazingly, they've broken through more Russian lines. They've broken through the Kherson front line. They are pushing south into the strategic Kherson region, according to Wall Street Journal. Ukrainian forces broke through Russian lines, made new advances in the southern Kherson region, while expanding their rapid offensive in the eastern part of the country, retaking areas that Moscow now claims to be part of Russia. Pushing south, the new Ukrainian advance secured a corner of the only Russian foothold on the western bank of the Dnipro River, which bisects the country. Ukraine has in recent months destroyed all the bridges to the enclave, which includes the regional capital Kherson, making it increasingly difficult for the large Russian military contingent there to be resupplied with food, ammunition, and fuel. They're gonna run away there too. Russian disarray on display as Ukraine's forces advance on 2 fronts. That has provoked Putin into an incredibly dangerous move. A nuclear weapons convoy sparks fear, according to the Telegraph in Great Britain, that Putin could be preparing to test a signal to the West. A Russian convoy of transporting equipment for Russia's nuclear weapons program has sparked fears that Putin is preparing a test to send a signal to the West. A train operated by the Secretive Nuclear Division and linked to the 12th Main Directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense was spotted in central Russia over the weekend, heading toward the front line in Ukraine. All right, so that's where we are this morning. Say some prayers for the people in Florida, the people in Puerto Rico, for the president, of course. We don't want him to be this infirm. He's wrong a lot, but I don't want him to be this feeble. And give him some 5-hour energy or something. Slow down the prompter, have him smile, and stay home. The John Fetterman approach would be best for Joe Biden right now. I'll be right back, America. There's lots ahead. In the House, chief correspondent for the Washington Examiner. You see him on all the networks. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm great, Hugh. How are you?
Good. You did an article yesterday on the Monmouth poll. Now, my view of polls is they always understate conservative support. Just happened in Brazil again, rather dramatic miss down there. But direction does matter. So if the polls are moving in one direction, all the polls, that's a good sign. Monmouth certainly brought good news to Republicans. Would you tell people about it?
Yeah, the Monmouth poll was a poll essentially of likely voters. It was adults, but they broke it down into people likely to vote. It was a national poll. Republicans were up on the generic ballot. That, of course, is just generic Republican versus generic Democrat. Who do you want in control of Congress? They were up by 3 points. The same Monmouth poll, or the same pollster, Monmouth, had Democrats up by 7 on that metric in August. The president's approval rating in this poll was 38%, so below 40%, which is a real problem for Democrats. And look, it polled, priority issues, and this was the other sort of headline out of the poll. And inflation is number one. Crime is in the top. Jobs and unemployment is in the top, 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. But below all of those, and the main point here was abortion. So, and one last thing, Republicans are maintaining their edge on voter enthusiasm. It was at 7 points here. Still not as big of an edge as it was around Memorial Day, but the people that are likeliest to vote are interested in voting for Republicans versus Democrats. So it was a very good poll for Republicans. We've seen some other polling over the past few days that looks really good for Republicans. And look, I think it gets back to what we've been saying, or what I've been saying and detecting out there, but it doesn't make me a rocket scientist. Just that the fundamentals of the election have always been in the Republicans' favor. Historically, the party out of power in the White House picks up seats. The issue set has benefited Republicans. And look, they don't even need a wave to win control of Congress. They need one net seat in the Senate, need a handful of seats in the House. And so Democrats, I still believe, remain more competitive than they were at the beginning of the summer, and are in at least some sort of position to stem their losses in the House, at least as it stands today, but not prevent losses. And the Senate's a little bit more competitive, can be a little bit more unpredictable, but a lot of the polling in a lot of the states that matter looks good for them. So we'll see how this thing unfolds over the next 5 weeks. But
let me play for you, Kate. You're a Californian originally. KTLA Channel 5 ran a story last night. I want to play a clip of it for you because it's the torpedo and midships at the Democrat. Cut number 5. 8 cents a gallon average in California. I'm thinking Katie Porter and other Democrats who are iffy are in big trouble out there. Plus that slips over in Nevada where Adam Laxalt is ahead, Joe Lombardo is ahead. I assume it's the same up the coast because West Coast gasoline is always more expensive. That is going to just hit it can't come at a worse time for Democrats.
Well, timing is everything. And so, look, even without gas prices, inflation continues to be a major issue, and it hasn't gone away. And I think that's the better way to look at this. Obviously, Republicans are targeting some House seats in California, and if the pain at the pump is felt like this, it could help that effort. But I think, the broader look nationally here is even though Democrats are more competitive than they were, the surge that they experienced late in the summer is not necessarily continuing at the same pace, if at all. And Republicans, when you look at the data, continue to benefit from the fundamentals and the issues that matter, and they're in a position to win control of Congress. I think, the question will be, can they extend the map of the Senate? There's still time. The question is whether they can do that, and how many House seats can they pick off?
Did you listen to the Mandela Barnes ad that the RNC ran yesterday? They found a Zoom call of him explicitly calling for defunding the police. I just think he's not going to even come within 5 points in Wisconsin. It might be 10 points up there.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far. Wisconsin's a very competitive state. It's a swing state. I think Ron Johnson is in a good position. I think the way to look at these things is not, how they appear in the first quarter of the game, but, how you think the offensive line, how you think the lines are going to stack up over the course of the game, right? Because a team with talent, a team with strength, eventually you get to the fourth quarter and the line starts to overpower the other team.
Unless you are the Cleveland Browns, David Drucker, in which case the best
Well, and
offensive
if I were
line
you, Hugh,
doesn't do that.
this is why I hate certainty in politics. Always look out for a Cleveland Browns finish.
There you go. A Cleveland Browns finish is not going to happen to Republicans this time. I mean, the data is overwhelming. Democrats are so dispirited. David M. Drucker, thank you. Byron York, his colleague at the Examiner, joins us next. America, stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Studio North, joined as I am on Tuesdays when we are lucky by Byron York of the Washington Examiner, Fox News correspondent. Good morning, Byron. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Doing well, thanks.
5 weeks out from election. How do you see it?
Republicans are going to win the House. I just don't think there's any doubt about that. And boy, will I be wrong if they don't. But, you were talking about the fundamentals, and they're just so clearly in favor of Republicans. There's just no doubt about it. We had this brief period where Democrats and I guess their allies in the media became kind of excited about the prospects for maybe not losing. But you were talking to David Drucker, and David Drucker in July of this year tweeted the most concise description of the cycle that occurs, the media and political cycle that occurs in midterms. And I'm going to read it. Midterm cycles since 2006 have a certain rhythm. Number one, maybe the president's party will avoid losses. Number two, things look good for the opposition party. Number three, things look really good for the opposition party. Number four, hold on, maybe the president's party won't lose as many seats as we thought. Number five, could the president's party actually avoid a wipeout? Number six, wipeout. Okay, that's what happens, and I think that's the cycle that we've gone through here, and I think that's what's going to happen.
So now we've
House.
got.
I don't say definitively at all for the Senate.
We now have the latest attack ad on Herschel Walker comes from the Daily Beast, with the only media organization to run it. So let's talk about it. The Daily Beast has run an anonymous allegation that Herschel Walker paid for an abortion for a girlfriend. No one is named. A receipt, the Daily Beast says they've seen enough to make them comfortable, but that's it's like me saying I've seen enough to bet on the Browns this weekend. Yeah. Sure, good, Hugh. We're not going to listen to you on gambling. What do you make of that story? Herschel said it's a lie, and he's going to sue the Daily Beast.
Well, they always say that they're going to sue, and they don't end up suing. Although Trump has sued CNN, but
yes, he did last night.
They end up not suing because that's not really a possibility. He says it's a lie. I think for most people, it's not going to affect the dynamics of that race. I find, I knowing a lot of people in Georgia, I can't believe that Walker is actually going to lose this simply because there's this incredible well of goodwill toward him that's more than 40 years old for having won the national championship for Georgia in 1980. I went back. There was a columnist humorist who was extremely popular in Georgia named Louis Grizzard. And after Georgia wins the national championship, he goes to Herschel Walker's hometown and talks to Herschel Walker's mother, and you can see it on YouTube, and there's this incredibly reverential feel for Grizzard sort of speaking for all of Georgia. And by the way, Grizzard, when he died young, actually had part of his ashes spread on Sanford Stadium at the University of Georgia in Athens. So there's this incredible reverence for Herschel Walker, and you can say, well, that shouldn't extend to a Senate seat, but the fact is it probably does.
And that race has been, as successfully as any race in the United States, elevated to a pure national race. It's about red and blue. Do you want the Senate to be run by Republicans, or do you want the Senate to be run by Democrats? Democrats got an education in that in their primary runoffs with Ossoff and Warnock 2 years ago. I feel very good about Herschel, and I don't think that, but I want to bring it up. It's in the news. Now I want to play for you the torpedo in the water. I played it for David Drucker as well, so you may have heard it already. From last night's KTLA Channel 5 news, cut number 5. That story alone means Katie Porter's in trouble, and that story alone means that prices, if they're rising on the West Coast, are going to rise in the rest of the country over the next 5 weeks. That's the torpedo in the water here. That they can't handle one more bad
Yeah.
surge of gas prices.
As a matter of fact, I think this sort of wave of Democratic optimism that I was talking about earlier actually crested, I think it was September the 13th, when we got the last inflation report that showed inflation was 8.3%. And I seriously think that a lot of Democrats just thought it might be they could wish it away, and things would just be better. And people would actually believe the president when he said inflation was 0%. That report just made it absolutely clear that it was chronic. It wasn't going away. And then when the Fed raised interest rates by another 0.75 points, the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, gives this really pessimistic statement and says, I don't think you have to read between the lines. He said, we're not going to have a soft landing. And sorry about that, but it's more important to get rid of inflation. So inflation is the public's number one concern. Never went away. The ability of Democrats to wish it away kind of disappeared in the last few weeks.
And there is no recovering with gas prices going up now. I want to play for you one more bit of tape. This is an RNC video, Mandela Barnes doing a Zoom interview earlier this year, cut number 7.
Funding isn't necessarily as aggressive as a lot of folks paint it. School budgets get cut almost every year. We need to invest more in neighborhood services and programming for our residents, for our communities on the front end. Where will that money come from? Well, it can come from overbloated budgets and police departments.
You've said with so far to go, it's not about taking baby steps, it's about taking as many steps as possible. Does that mean abolishing or defunding police departments?
That means taking a look around at society and asking, how do we get here? It's about looking at priorities of city budgets. I can say, in my hometown of Milwaukee, the police budget has exceeded the entire property tax levy for 5 consecutive years. You can say that 45% of all departmental allocations go towards the police department in the city of Milwaukee, while libraries get about 3%, neighborhood services get about 2 to 3%. And that sort of dichotomy when it comes to funding can't be sustainable.
That is sustainable. It's in fact necessary, Byron York. I think that finishes Mandela Barnes. Put a fork in him.
Yeah, I definitely think Ron Johnson is going to win that race. And yes, you can do a report that says they really did want to defund the police. I mean, they won't say so now, but they really did want to defund the police. And the moderate position there was to partially defund the police. So that's absolutely true. And Ron Johnson also, I never had a lot of doubts about this. He knocked off an incumbent senator in 2010, wasn't supposed to be able to win again in 2016, and he's shown an ability to actually survive in these elections. And now it appears the tide has turned up there.
Yeah, he can close. Let's close with the president and what I call his infirmity. In Puerto Rico yesterday, it was just a disaster. Even with the first lady behind him cueing the clapping from the crowd. He's just really bad, very infirm. What do they do at the White House? Keep him under wraps for 5 weeks?
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you listen to Biden at some of his lowest moments, he came out and said, I got to get out of the White House. I got to go take our message to the people. I need to get out and campaign. I'm going to raise a lot of money and I'm going to campaign a lot. And he's not campaigning that much because not that many Democrats want him to come. And there are two reasons. One, he is pretty unpopular. He's 38 in the new Monmouth poll, which is low on the low end, but he's not a lot better than 42 or 43 on any of the other ones as well. And the second thing is, what kind of performance are you going to get if the president comes to speak on your behalf? Is it going to be a YouTube gaffe or is it going to be a political boost? Never can tell.
With this, I think the odds are that it would be a negative. He'll be staying in the White House. The question is whether or not he does more of these things. Byron York, always a good to see you. Follow him on Twitter at Byron York. Watch for him on Special Report, where I occasionally get to contend with Byron as a seatmate. I just kind of throw the time to Byron because he actually knows more than pretty much everyone else in the business. Don't go anywhere, America. Every time I drive down from Midcoast Maine to Boston or further south, I go through AM 560 in Portland, their strongest signal in FM 98.5. I love WGAN. It's my local affiliate in Portland, and it's in the heart of Maine, 1st Congressional District, which has long been a blue seat, but which could flip red this time because Ed Thielander is seeking it out. Good morning, Ed. Welcome to the program. Great to have you on.
Hey, good morning, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Your ears might have been burning yesterday. I was having breakfast with my brother-in-law and a fellow named Bill Scarborough, who knows you, and he's telling me you're all in on this campaign. You are not daunted by the D plus whatever it is district nature.
No, hey, we're leaning forward like nobody has ever done, and we're getting it. It's amazing to see the people out there like Bill. I mean, he's all in, helping us out. It's an amazing race, and we're crushing it. We're actually out raising. Go ahead.
Talk to people about who you are and why they should contribute to your race. I got Derek Van Orden coming on later in the hour. I'm talking to two SEALs this morning, Ed Thielander and Derek Van Orden. Both of them would help Congress. Tell us about your background, Ed.
Yeah, and actually I was at SEAL Team 4 with Derek many, many moons ago. But so I'm a retired Navy SEAL. I did 21 years in the Navy, all of it in the SEAL teams. I was at SEAL Team 3, SEAL Team 4, SDV Team 2, the little mini submarines. I was the sniper course manager for all the SEAL teams. And came up to Maine in 2006 to teach the Navy SEER School, the survival school. The Navy's got 13,000 beautiful acres up there by Rangeley. Retired in 2009. I became a volunteer firefighter because they needed help there, and loved that. And I watched an active shooter drill at my kid's school, and I became a reserve deputy sheriff here in Lincoln County. A life of service, and 14 months ago now, I was asked to run for Congress, and I will serve one more time. But I do need people to step up with us so we can get the word out and let people know we're alive.
The website is ThielanderForCongress.com. Thielander, THELANDER, FOR Congress.com. I have to spell it out for the Steelers fans. Now, when I get two SEALs, Lou Bremer and Rourke Denver, telling me that you are a stand-up guy, that's about as good a recommendation as I can possibly have. Does it translate? What you learn in the teams, does that translate, do you think, to Congress?
Oh, incredibly. The ability to reach across to the other side, doing negotiations in the desert where I'm at a disadvantage tactically, and I have to, because I have no gun, and I'm just trying to get things going so we can get some peace, in Yemen. And it's a wild ride to actually try and figure out that common ground to get things moving forward. Organizationally, motivation, teamwork. That's all I know. And it's time to put that into Congress. There's a bunch of us running, and we will make a difference. We just need to get there. People need to know that they have this option out there.
Now, your district includes places very familiar to Americans like Kennebunkport, but also includes some of South Portland, some pretty hard-hit neighborhoods by the COVID shutdown. Portland schools have been rock bit. What do you say to people that, I want to stick with the Democrats, they have more compassion?
Yeah, you know what? Don't take that compassion as advertised. A lot of it is a control tool, and with the unions, it's a single point of control for the Democrat Party, and that's exact. I actually got a union guy to admit that, or to agree to it rather. It's not what it is. We want to fix things. We want to get people working so they can be independent. If you want to be controlled and have a mediocre to, barely surviving life, then that look towards that. But if you want to be successful, if you want to actually step up and improve your life, that's what we're going to do when we get to Congress.
Now, Ed Thielander, they want to treat this as an in-the-bag race and keep the national media from paying attention to it. Has she agreed to debate you at all, the incumbent?
Yeah, we've got two debates, one on the 12th and one on the 19th of October. And, I look so forward to that. It's definitely not in the bag. It definitely is not. As we get all over Portland and South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, where Republicans normally fear to tread, I go in there happy as can be because we're getting all these independents, all these folks to step up and they are tired. They're realizing what they signed up for before is not real, and they need help. You go into affordable housing, and I have not knocked on a door that's not excited to hear that. Not just the Navy SEAL, but the volunteer firefighter, the reserve deputy sheriff, someone that actually sees people when they're really in need, because that's what you do as when you're serving like that. You find people and you see what people really need.
So, Ed, I trundled through the Beach to Beacon race this summer down in South Portland at Cape Elizabeth. You made me think of this. Funniest sign. Now, I'm not very fast anymore. I'm an old man. But when I was out there trundling along, there was a sign, "You're running better than the government," which made me laugh and actually gave me a little lift in my step at about 4.5 miles. And that is, in fact, the case. Do you find that talking to people? The government just isn't doing anything. It's not executing on anything, anywhere, at any time.
No, it's not, and a lot of that is just, happily enjoying the ride. If you've been there so long and you really haven't done anything, you're just waiting, because you think it's an in the bag race, and you don't have to serve the people. You're wrong. There's so much going around. Everything, what's happened with our lobstermen here in Maine, to the schools, to energy. We're going to be hurting. This winter is going to be tough on people, and people are seeing that they're not getting help.
Let's talk about the lobstermen, because Susan Collins has educated me on this. The federal government has a war on lobstermen. I do not understand it, but they just want to destroy their industry. They're the symbol of Maine, and yet the federal government wants to put them out of business. What's your position on this, Ed?
Well, you said you don't understand it. That's because it's not to be understood. The right whale is, there's questionable numbers, whether they're actually, endangered or threatened is that question. But the fact is they're not getting entangled here in Maine, and they want to, we've had 0 kills from the lobstermen here in Maine. There's no proof of it. There was one entanglement in 2004. It got out, and they want to shut down the lobster industry. They want to make it so hard that it will only be feasible for a large company to come in and take over. And they want to use buoyless gear that's going to raise a buoy, when you ping it. It not only is it not affordable, you're looking at $4,000, that's a very rough number, per line. And instead of $10, what's that going to do to the price? And who's going to be able to afford to do that? Again, the right whale has not been harmed by the lobstermen. There's a lot of ship strikes. There's other factors in there, but the lobstermen, they're small, family operations. They're banded together, but they're still not as big as, the bigger companies out there. They want to put these windmills out where the lobstermen fish, and because they're shallower, because the mountains the mountains in the sea where, the fish life go. And they're going to be, that bottom is going to get raked by a 9-foot chain link, dragging on the bottom, 3 of them per windmill. And they're going to daisy chain huge cables through that are going to bother the whales. The windmill farms like New Vineyard gets 20 level B harassments, which includes not letting them breed, stopping them from breeding, interfering with their migratory path. They get 20. The lobstermen haven't killed any right whales, but they want them to kill less.
It's crazy, but I dealt on the West Coast with these bureaucracies for 30 years, Ed, and I couldn't get anyone to listen to me. How unscientific, whether it's the maritime agencies or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or Coastal Commission, they're all unscientific. They're run by complete ideologues. So, closing message, Ed Thielander. Where can people come to help you? What do they need to do to help you in Portland first? That's all my WGAN listening audience. If you're listening to me, tell your friends about Ed Thielander. Where do they go, Ed?
Yep, go to ThielanderForCongress.com. THELANDER for Congress.com.
Thielander for Congress. Help him out because the guy is working hard. Ed, I look forward to seeing you on the streets of Portland when I'm down there sometime, or at a Sea Dogs game. Good luck in the closing kick. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere except over to Alliance Defending Freedom. Please don't forget that we can elect every Congress that we need. We can put Ed Thielander into the House of Representatives. We can put Derek Van Orden there. But if we don't have lawsuits being brought to the Supreme Court by Alliance Defending Freedom, we are not going to preserve our First Amendment liberties of speech and free exercise of religion. Please be a generous supporter of Alliance Defending Freedom. $10 or $10,000. You can do it at hughhewitt.com. I'll be right back.